I got home around 4:30 that Thursday, dropped my keys in the dish by the door, and was halfway through heating up leftover chili when I noticed the noise coming from the backyard. At first, I thought it was just my neighbor's lawn guy, the one who insists on using a gas trimmer loud enough to wake the Civil War dead. But then I heard it. Not the mechanical whine of landscaping. No, this was digging. Like actual, heavy equipment, rip up your yard, digging. I stepped out onto the back deck, chili still in my hand, and just stood there. There were 3 guys in orange vests out by the water line. One of them was marking measurements with those little neon flags, one was on a mini backhoe, and the third was, I kid you not, chainsawing my mother's lilac hedge. And right in the middle of it all was a crisp, laminated sign, zip-tied to my dock railing. Community Dock, coming spring 2025. No explanation, no notice, no one had asked. My first reaction was confusion, then disbelief. Then I watched the guy with the chainsaw yank out the roots of the last bush my mom ever planted, and whatever emotion came after that didn't have a polite name. I stormed down the hill so fast I nearly slipped, yelling over the engine noise. The foreman looked up from his clipboard and gave me the kind of smile you reserve for a confused customer at Home Depot. Afternoon, you the new HOA liaison? I said, no, I'm the guy whose yard you're destroying. His smile faltered. This is 1230 Lakeshore Drive, right? Yeah, and I own it. So unless you've got a permission slip from God or a time machine signed by my mother, I suggest you shut it down. Now. Apparently, they'd been hired by Lakeside Preserve HOA to install a shared amenity pier for lakefront access. Never mind the fact that I'm not in the HOA, never have been, never wanted to be. The guy pointed vaguely up the hill toward the cul-de-sac like that explained anything. We were told this shoreline's already been incorporated. Lady in the office said y'all had agreed. Yeah. Y'all definitely did not agree. I made a few phone calls after that. One to the sheriff's office, who said it was a civil issue. One to the local zoning board, closed for the day, and one to Pamela Stokes, the queen bee of the HOA, whose voicemail was full. Of course it was. By sundown, the workers were gone, the hedge was gone, and I was sitting on the deck with a cold beer, staring at the freshly torn up bank where my mother's lilacs used to be. The worst part? I wasn't even shocked. Because the truth is, this wasn't the first time Pamela had tried something like this. It was just the first time she'd brought a damn excavator. Let me back up a bit. I'm Calvin Reyes, 42 years old, community college history instructor, second-generation Texan, and the proud owner of the last privately held lakefront property in Lakeside Preserve. My parents bought this house in '89, back when the lake was just a hidden gem and not a marketing gimmick for real estate brochures. My dad built most of the house himself. It's nothing fancy, just solid timber, a wide porch, and a workshop that still smells like sawdust and WD-40. He passed away in 2012. My mom stuck around until a few years ago. The lilacs out back, the ones they ripped up, she planted those when I was born. Every spring they'd bloom like clockwork, like she was still reminding the neighborhood we were here first. After she died, I moved back in full time, left the Houston campus, started teaching U.S. history here in town, figured I'd keep the place in the family and fix it up slow. The land meant something. The water line, the trees, that hedge. And yeah, that dock. A plain old wooden dock my dad built with rusty nails and stubborn pride. It was never meant to be shared. See, my folks specifically bought this plot because it sat just outside the HOA boundary. It was deliberate. They wanted peace and privacy, not community cookouts and lawn citations. Pamela Stokes, on the other hand, had other ideas. She called it unification. I called it what it was, a land grab. But this time, she made a mistake. She thought she could break something that couldn't be replaced, and I wasn't about to let that slide. The first time Pamela tried to rope me in, she showed up at my door with a gift basket. I should have known right then it wasn't going to be good. It was one of those oversized fake wicker things wrapped in cellophane and stuffed with discount wine, a candle that smelled like lavender and regret, and a glossy HOA welcome packet the size of a church hymnal. I opened the door in my sweats. It was grading day, and I was knee-deep in essays about the Constitutional Convention. She smiled like I was a lost puppy she'd finally found in a ditch. "Oh, good," she chirped. "You are home." She had that tone people use when they're already halfway through a conversation you never agreed to have. "I'm Pamela Stokes," she said, holding out the basket like a peace offering, president of the Lakeside Preserve Homeowners Association. I took the basket mostly so she'd stop waving it in my face. "Yeah, I know who you are," I said, because unfortunately I did. She was the one who'd sent me a letter a year earlier saying my front walkway paint color may fall outside community aesthetic guidelines, even though I don't live in your damn community. She gave a tight little laugh. Well, I just wanted to personally welcome you to the fold. Fold? I raised an eyebrow. She gestured over my shoulder toward the lake. Now that the Eastern Shore has been mapped into Phase 3, we're thrilled to consider your property part of the official HOA community. We've even added you to the digital directory. It's a formality, really. I stared at her. No, it's not, I said. I'm not in the HOA. My property line was drawn in 1989, and it's not part of your subdivision. Never has been. Her smile didn't budge. It was the kind of smile that says, bless your heart, you don't know what's good for you. Well, I know it's confusing with the new development zones, she said, digging in her purse, but I have the updated parcel maps from the county office. She pulled out a laminated page with a bunch of colored overlays that looked like a toddler had gone nuts with highlighters. This shows the community boundaries post-zoning adjustment, she said. I didn't even look at it. I have the original deed, I said, from the county, and I've never signed any covenant agreement, so unless you have something with my name on it, I'm going to go ahead and decline your membership invitation. Her smile froze, just a hair. Then, like clockwork, she switched tactics. Oh, of course, she said sweetly. Totally voluntary. We just want to keep you in the loop. We do have some upcoming shoreline enhancements happening soon, and it'd be great to get your cooperation. It's all for the good of the community. There it was. The hook. Shoreline enhancements, I repeated. You mean the lakefront that belongs to me. Well, she said, brushing invisible lint off her shoulder, technically it's part of the shared watershed. Nope. She blinked. Nope, I said again. That whole stretch, dock, bank, trees, it's mine. My mom paid to have it surveyed twice just to keep your type off it. Pamela actually had the nerve to look offended. Well, I hope you'll reconsider. The HOA can be very helpful when everyone works together. I nodded and started closing the door. I'm sure it can, for people who are actually in it. She gave a tight laugh as the door shut. I stood there a second, staring at the basket in my hand. The candle was already giving me a headache. I threw it all in the trash and didn't think much of it until 2 weeks later when I came home to find a bright orange violation notice duct taped to my mailbox. Notice, property does not meet community standards. Lawn maintenance required. Pressure washing recommended. HOA will perform services at owner's expense if not completed by next inspection date. The kicker? My mailbox is on my side of the county road, and my grass was literally 3 inches high. I called the HOA office, not because I thought it would help, but because I was in the mood to ruin someone's day. A perky woman named Kristen picked up and asked for my address. I gave it. Oh, she said slowly, Lakeshore East, right? Nope, I said, just Lakeshore, no East, no HOA. There was a pause, then, well, our records show you were added to the community perimeter in the latest boundary update, so we're just trying to keep everything uniform. I didn't sign off on any perimeter update. You don't have to sign off, she said cheerfully. It's part of Phase 3 Assimilation. I swear she said assimilation like she was Borg from Star Trek. I laughed. Actual full-body laughed. Okay, Kristen, good luck with that. But just so we're clear, I'm not in your HOA, I didn't join, and if anyone steps foot on my lawn with a pressure washer, they're going to find out what the Second Amendment is for. I hung up. They didn't send anyone. Not yet, anyway. But the game had started. And Pamela? She was just warming up. It started small. After the fake violation notice didn't scare me off, the HOA switched tactics. A couple weeks passed in peace, and I thought maybe Pamela had crawled back under her overpriced porch. Nope. First, it was the trash pickup. Mine just stopped. Every Thursday, the lakeside trucks would skip my bin. Everyone else on the road, taken. Mine, untouched. Even when I dragged it to the curb the night before, even when I spray painted my address on the side. I called the waste company. The guy on the phone was polite, too polite, and said, yeah, we were told by the HOA that Property 1230 is under private management now. HOA opted you out of municipal pickup. Opted me out, like I was some subscription box of trash. Then came the letters. 3 of them in 1 week. All from different departments. County Code Enforcement, Lakefront Management, and, get this, the Zoning Commission. All citing concerns submitted by the community HOA about my unapproved shoreline modifications. Modifications? I hadn't touched that shoreline since my dad built the dock. I called every office back. Each one said the same thing. The HOA had submitted formal complaints. Nothing could move forward until an inspection was done. I told one guy, "Sir, this property isn't even under their jurisdiction." He sighed like I was the third person that day to say it. "Yeah, that's what your neighbor said too. You're not the first one they've tried this on." I started keeping a folder, a real one, manila, labeled Pamela's BS in Sharpie. Every letter, every fake violation, every printout of her HOA bylaws that had nothing to do with me. I figured if she was going to bury me in paper, I might as well start digging my way out. But then she crossed a line I didn't think even she would dare touch. It was the second week of April, that sweet spot where spring finally pushes Texas into something that almost feels like a reward. The lilacs I'd replanted out back, cuttings from what they'd destroyed, were starting to bud. I'd babied those things for over a year. My mom loved them, always said they smelled like forgiveness. She used to sit out there in the evenings with a book and a glass of iced tea just soaking in the smell. That spot was hers. Still is. So when I came home that Friday and saw a row of pink utility flags sticking out of the flower bed, her flower bed, I knew something was wrong. I followed the flags down to the dock, heart pounding. Spray-painted lines on the grass, bright orange and impossible to miss. Some kind of planned dig. And then I saw the sign. Future Site, Community Dock Extension, HOA Project 2, 41B, Permit Pending. They hadn't just flagged my land. They had submitted a permit application using my address. They were trying to build a structure on my shoreline, using my property as their anchor, and had filed it through the county with the HOA's name listed as the applicant. I lost it. I drove straight to the HOA office, which, of course, was located inside a fake colonial-style community center that probably cost more than a firehouse. Kristen greeted me again, this time with less perk and more caution. "Is Pamela in?" I asked. She opened her mouth to lie, and I just walked past her. Pamela was in the conference room, surrounded by 3 other board members, all in various shades of pastel and power. I dropped a stack of printouts on the table so hard the room went dead quiet. "What the hell is this?" I asked. Pamela didn't even flinch. She folded her hands and smiled like she was explaining bedtime to a child. "Oh, Calvin, we submitted a request for shoreline improvement. There's been overwhelming support for a new dock that serves the whole community, and yours is the best access point." I blinked. "That's because it's my dock, because I own the property." One of the men, a guy I'd seen jogging past my place in compression socks, chimed in. "You know, it really would raise the value of your parcel. You'd be the centerpiece of the whole waterfront." I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "You destroyed my lilacs, you forged a permit, you've sent fake violations and tried to get my trash canceled, and now you want to anchor your HOA dock on my land?" Pamela raised a hand like a patient schoolteacher. "Let's not get emotional. It's a shared resource. The community voted." "I didn't vote," I snapped, "because I'm not in your damn community." She stood slowly, eyes locked on mine. The room went quiet. "You can fight us, Calvin," she said, "but it won't end well. The board is united, the development is already approved, and every complaint you file just makes you look unreasonable." There it was. The smile, the threat, the smug certainty that no one would stop her. Man, it hit me in that moment. She didn't care about the dock, or the shoreline, or the damn lilacs. She wanted my land. Not for a picnic, not for unity. She wanted control. And she just made it personal. I didn't go scorched earth right away. I wanted to. Believe me. But I'm not the guy who files lawsuits before breakfast. I teach U.S. history, not small claims warfare. My first instinct is always document, file, escalate. So that weekend, I pulled out my dad's old file cabinet, the one with the rusted drawer and the broken label marked Title Deed Stuff Don't Lose, and spent 2 full days going through every inch of paperwork I could find. Original deed? Check. Survey maps? 2. One from '89, one redone after the dock was rebuilt in 2006. County property map showed my lot sitting neatly outside the HOA border with a note that said independent parcel, not subject to lakeside governance. It was as clear as a 4th of July parade. Pamela had no jurisdiction. Monday morning, I drove into town and walked straight into the county planning office. Now, if you've never had the pleasure of dealing with a mid-sized Texas planning office at 9 a.m. on a Monday, let me paint the picture. Beige walls, humming fluorescent lights, and the smell of vending machine coffee strong enough to peel paint. I sat down with a woman named Connie, 60-ish, hair like a helmet, voice like a librarian with a headache. I slid the permit copy across her desk. She read it, looked up at me. "You're not part of the HOA." "No," I said. "I've never been part of it, and they filed this permit claiming they own shoreline rights that belong to me." Connie nodded slowly, flipping through my documents. She paused on the survey map. Well, this is going to be tricky, she said. Tricky how? They've already submitted their application as a community enhancement project, and the city council's fast-tracking shoreline work right now, something about state recreation funding deadlines. So unless there's an objection on file, it'll get processed by default. Great, file my objection. She blinked. I mean, you'll need to submit it formally, notarized. Public comment window closes Wednesday. It was Monday. I asked why I hadn't received notice. She shrugged. The HOA claimed they notified all adjacent parties. They didn't. Then that's another form, she said, reaching under the counter. I walked out of there with 4 forms, a list of filing fees, and a migraine. But I did it. I got them notarized, made copies, and even dropped one off at the mayor's office just for good measure. Then I waited. For a week. Then 2. Then I got a letter in the mail from the Zoning Appeals Board. 1 paragraph. Barely a full sentence. Objection denied. Permit 2. 41B meets municipal standards under HOA Community Planning Authority. That was it. No explanation, no contact info. I called the appeals board. No answer. I emailed 3 people. 1 reply. We'll review your concerns in the next cycle. Pamela, meanwhile, was on Facebook posting pastel-filtered renderings of the new community dock expansion. She even posted a little blurb about how the HOA was thrilled to receive overwhelming support for increased lake access. Support. From who? The 10 people on her board? One post had a photo of the property map with my lot blurred out like it was redacted by the Pentagon. I drove to the city council building and asked for a hearing. They told me the hearing schedule was full through the summer. Can I file a complaint? I asked. You can submit a statement, the clerk said. It'll be reviewed during the standard administrative window. And how long's that? Between 30 and 90 days. It was early May. The dock construction was scheduled for June 10th. I'd be underwater before they even read my name. I called a lawyer next, a local guy, Alan Ruiz, who'd helped one of my students with a boundary dispute. He was polite, well-spoken, and immediately recognized Pamela's name. Oh, Stokes, he said with a sigh. Yeah, she's got connections. Political? Worse, golf. Turns out her husband was in a tournament league with one of the zoning commissioners and half the city council. I've seen her sink 3 projects that interfered with community harmony, he said. She's careful, but she knows how to lean on people. Can we stop the dock? I asked. Alan hesitated. Not with just a zoning appeal. You'd need to prove malice or fraud. I told him about the fake permit, the pink flags, the violation notices. He nodded. It's shady, but shady's not illegal, unless you've got hard proof she forged something or misrepresented ownership on a government filing. I looked at my growing folder and felt the kind of rage that doesn't explode. It settles. Not hot, cold, focused. Pamela had stacked the whole system against me, and every polite channel I tried just bounced me back like a defective ping-pong ball. But I wasn't out of moves. Because if there's one thing I've learned from teaching American history, it's this. When the system protects the wrong people, you go back to the source. You dig. You read everything. And if someone buried something they didn't want found, well, you make it your business to find it. So here's the thing. No one tells you when you inherit old property from your parents. The past doesn't come in boxes. It comes in layers. And sometimes those layers don't show up until you're crawling through a crawl space in your dad's busted-up work shed, cussing out raccoons and nearly getting a nail through the thigh. It started because of a water leak. I'd noticed a drop in pressure coming from the garden spigot near the dock, the one my mom used to water the flower beds. At first, I thought it was just an old pipe giving up, but when I opened the valve box behind the shed, I saw something weird. 2 pipes, one clearly going toward the house, standard, but the other? It was older, thicker, wrapped in insulation that looked like it predated Reagan. It ran down toward the lake. I got curious, which is my curse, so I followed it, and where it led me was a rusted-out pump system tucked under a trap door built into the back of the shed, half covered in cobwebs and toolboxes my dad hadn't touched in 20 years. What I found looked like a plumbing Frankenstein monster, part irrigation, part municipal, part something else. And next to it, in a sealed file box wrapped in plastic, was a thick folder labeled in my dad's handwriting, Water Rights, Do Not Throw Away. Inside were documents going back to 1981, letters from the county, engineering maps, a certified contract from a utility co-op called Clearwater Lake Resource District, and one absolutely pristine legal agreement, notarized, sealed, signed by a judge, that outlined exclusive private shoreline water access rights for Parcel 41A. My parcel. Turns out, back in the early 80s, when the city was expanding and local developers were scrambling for access to freshwater reserves, my dad had negotiated a deal. He let the county run a portion of pipe through our land, under very specific conditions. In exchange, our property was granted perpetual primary rights to draw water directly from the lakeshore, separate from the community system. Why? Because at the time, there was talk of selling water access as a private utility. It never happened, but the paperwork remained. And the kicker? The HOA was never supposed to tap into it. In fact, there was a clause, I kid you not, that said any third-party connection without owner consent would qualify as grounds for civil fraud and resource theft. And here's where it got spicy. I grabbed a flashlight, followed the pipe down past the old pump junction, and guess what I found near the dock? A new connection. PVC, clean, freshly sealed, tagged with a sticker from Lakeside Utility Management, which, surprise, surprise, was run by the same board member who jogs in compression socks and thinks he's subtle. They'd tied into my private water line, quietly, illegally. Not only had Pamela forged a permit using my property, she was literally stealing water from my line to supply the community dock they hadn't even built yet. Suddenly, everything clicked. That's why the trash got pulled, why the zoning board kept slow-rolling my complaints, why my pressure tank had been acting funny for weeks. They were laying the infrastructure before construction even started, because it wasn't just a dock, it was phase 1 of a new lakeside development. I flipped back through the documents, and there it was, a stamped utility expansion proposal from the HOA's Green Horizon Initiative, filed 6 months ago with language like increased shoreline use, water draw extensions, and community irrigation access. They were planning to run full-service plumbing through my property to serve their future lakefront homes. And Pamela? She knew exactly what she was doing. The dock wasn't a dock, it was the foot in the door. If they built it, they'd have precedent, and once that line was in, the HOA would argue established usage. Then they'd push for easements, then rezoning. Then, boom, my parents' land becomes another cookie-cutter lakeside cul-de-sac. And no one would even remember the lilacs. I sat there in the shed for a long time. Just me, the paperwork, and the low hiss of pressure from a valve they never should have touched. I wasn't angry, I was done. They'd trespassed, lied, falsified permits, stolen water. But now I had leverage, not a complaint, not a theory, proof. A legal agreement older than half the HOA board, ironclad, enforceable, and crystal clear. And Pamela, she was about to find out that some history isn't buried, it's planted, like roots, deep. And when you try to rip it up for profit, it fights back. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't eat either, unless you count 3 cups of bad coffee and a leftover breakfast taco I found in the fridge and immediately regretted. Instead, I sat at my dining table, surrounded by papers, legal filings, old survey maps, zoning codes, everything my dad left behind, building my case like it was a term paper I intended to defend in front of Congress. Because I wasn't just going to stop the dock, I was going to dismantle the whole damn operation. But I knew better than to charge in waving documents like a lunatic. Pamela had friends on every board in town, and they all smiled the same way, like they already knew what the answer was going to be. So I needed more than outrage. I needed optics. I needed to make this public, understandable, unignorable. So here's what I did. Step 1, call Alan, the lawyer. I told him about the old Clearwater Lake agreement. Sent him scans of everything, the notarized water rights, the signed easement, the no third-party connection clause. Alan whistled low into the phone. "This is good," he said. "This is really good." Is it good enough to get them off my land? Better, it's good enough to put them in court. But I didn't want court, not yet. I want this to hurt publicly, I said, not just legally. Alan was quiet for a second, then said, "Okay. Then we do this in 2 parts. I file a cease and desist based on the utility theft, quietly so they don't know you're playing offense. Meanwhile, you prep the story. Get people on your side. Build the narrative." It was exactly what I was thinking. Step 2, I called Jackson Tran. Jackson's a former student of mine, journalism major, one of the few who actually paid attention to local news. He's got a podcast now, Small Town Deep Dives, and a TikTok account that had recently gone viral for exposing shady land sales up in Dallas County. I sent him the photos of the illegal utility tap, the permit application, the water rights folder. His reply was immediate. "Oh, hell yes, when do I come by?" We met 2 days later. He brought 2 cameras, a mic, and that Gen Z energy that can turn dry legal text into a viral slideshow with sound effects and dramatic music. I gave him everything, not just the facts, but the whole story, the lilacs, the fake violations, the dock that wasn't a dock. He ate it up like popcorn. "You're basically David and she's HOA Goliath," he said, eyes lighting up. "This is so meta. Can I call it the Water Heist?" "Sure," I said. "Just spell my name right." Step 3. Hit the HOA where it hurts. Their image. See, Pamela didn't just want control. She wanted status. The HOA wasn't just a bureaucracy to her. It was a brand. A polished, curated image of lakeside perfection. So I decided to help her ruin it. I printed out the water theft documents and highlighted the clause about civil liability. Then I drafted a very polite, very professional email addressed to the entire HOA board. "Dear members of Lakeside, Preserve HOA, I am writing to inform you that your current infrastructure work involves unauthorized use of a protected private utility. Please review the attached documentation confirming that any connection to Parcel 41A's water line constitutes civil fraud under the terms of a 1981 agreement. As such, I urge you to immediately halt all activity related to Project 2 41B, pending legal action is being considered." I signed it respectfully, Calvin Reyes. No threats, no rants, just facts. The kind that taste like battery acid when you try to deny them. Then I BCC'd 3 local reporters, the mayor's office, the zoning board, and the City Utilities Commission. I sent it at 8:57 a.m. on a Tuesday, right as the HOA board was scheduled to start their weekly planning breakfast. Timing's everything. Step 4, call Walter. Yeah, that Walter. My parents' old friend, former land surveyor, now mostly spends his time fixing antique tractors and eavesdropping like it's a hobby. "Hey Walter," I said, "you still talk to that guy on the municipal inspection crew?" He chuckled. "Sure do. He owes me a beer and a carburetor. What's up?" I told him the situation. I didn't need anything sketchy, just an official presence to come verify the connection tap, maybe take a few pictures. Walter made the call, said they'd swing by. Then he said something that made me smile. "You know, your mama once told me that the best way to deal with people like Pamela is to make them explain themselves out loud. Let them talk long enough, they'll hang themselves with their own pearls." I hung up knowing exactly how this would go. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to let Pamela explain herself in public. And the second she did, the water wasn't the only thing that was going to start leaking. I didn't throw a punch. I didn't raise my voice. I just pulled the pin and let the truth do the damage. It all started Thursday morning, 6:45 a.m., with a silver municipal pickup truck rolling up to my dock. 2 city inspectors climbed out, one younger guy with a clipboard, one older guy with a camera and a thermos that smelled like gasoline. They nodded at me, gave the dock a once-over, and started documenting. Not just photos, measurements, pipe fittings, location markers. The older one turned to me and said, "Yeah, that's definitely not permitted. That tap shouldn't exist, and it's pulling pressure." I asked if he needed anything else. He grinned. "Just a minute, I'm going to send this straight to code enforcement, and water resources, and zoning." He winked. "This one's going to be fun." While they were still working, Jackson showed up, camera gear in the back of his hybrid. "We rolling?" he asked. "Roll away." He filmed the inspection, interviewed the city guys, got a shot of me holding the old water rights agreement like it was the Constitution. Then he pulled out his phone and tapped a few things. "Uploading now," he said. "Titles, The HOA That Stole a Lake. Give it 15 minutes. It took less than 10. By 7:30 a.m., the video was on TikTok. By 8 o'clock, it was on Facebook. By 8:15, my neighbor Dana was texting me, "Calvin, is this you? Pamela is losing it in the HOA group chat. Ha 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 ha." And then at 9:02 a.m., just as I was finishing my second cup of coffee, I got the email. From Pamela. Subject line, urgent, meeting request. Body. "Mr. Reyes, I believe we've had some miscommunications. I'd very much like to speak with you directly and resolve this matter amicably. Please let me know when you're available." I didn't reply, not yet. Instead, I took a drive. Stop 1, City Hall. Dropped off a physical complaint to go along with the inspection report. The receptionist barely blinked when I said Lakeside HOA. She just handed me a fresh copy of the zoning appeals calendar and said, "You might want to come to Tuesday's meeting. Lot of eyes on this one now." Stop 2, local newspaper. Walked in with a copy of the water rights agreement and said, "You're probably already hearing about this, but I figured I'd give you the primary sources." The reporter looked like he'd just been handed the Zapruder film. Stop 3, my front porch. I sat down in the rocker with a fresh printout of Pamela's HOA proposal from last month, the one promising shared lakefront harmony. I took a red pen and wrote in big letters across the top, "Shared, steer stolen when it's not yours." Then I took a picture of that and posted it to my neighborhood's Facebook group with the caption, "Friendly reminder, Lakeside Preserve HOA tried to run a utility line through my land without permission. They called it a community feature. I call it theft." P.S. The lilacs are coming back nicely. Thanks for asking. It exploded. 30 likes in 20 minutes. Comments like, "I knew something was off with that dock." "They did the same thing to my cousin in Glenmere." Can't wait for the HOA to try and spin this one. At noon, I finally replied to Pamela's email. "Hi Pamela, I appreciate your sudden interest and resolution. However, I believe we've already established a clear pattern of deception and boundary violations on your part. As such, I'm no longer comfortable handling this privately. If you have something to say, feel free to address it publicly at the next zoning meeting, or in court. Respectfully, Calvin Reyes." She didn't respond, but Jackson sent me a screenshot from the HOA's private digital newsletter that afternoon. Someone had leaked it. It included a paragraph from Pamela titled, "Community Clarification, Recent Misinformation About Dock Projects." It was full of buzzwords: collaborative vision, misunderstood mapping, legacy easements. But the best line by far? "We were under the impression that Mr. Reyes's property was participating voluntarily." Participating voluntarily. Like I'd signed up for lakefront fraud as a hobby. That weekend, the local news picked up Jackson's video. They ran it under the headline, "Homeowner Uncovers Illegal HOA Water Tap. I Just Wanted to Keep My Lilacs." By Monday, it had over 80,000 views. By Tuesday, the zoning meeting was standing room only. And Pamela? Oh, she showed up. Pearls on, lips tight, fake smile so brittle it looked like it would crack if someone sneezed wrong. She stood in front of the council and tried to explain the confusion. Called it a regrettable oversight. Blamed the utility contractor. Claimed she believed the parcel was community managed. Then they showed the inspector's report, and the footage of the illegal pipe, and my notarized water rights. She went quiet, and for the first time since this started, everyone else did too. The moment Pamela sat down, the room shifted. You could feel it. Like somebody had finally turned the lights on and caught the roaches mid-scatter. The zoning board didn't even fake polite this time. The chair, a guy named Harold, whose defining features are a bow tie and a deep allergy to conflict, cleared his throat and said, "Mrs. Stokes, just so I'm clear, you submitted a permit for a dock project on property you don't own, using water access you don't control, without notifying the deeded landowner while representing your HOA as the authority over said land." Pamela smiled like she was posing for a headshot. "Well, as I stated, there was a shared understanding—" "No, ma'am," Harold cut in, actual steel in his voice for the first time since I'd met him. "That's not what I asked." Pamela blinked, looked down, shifted in her chair. And in that second, I realized something. She wasn't used to being told no. And she really wasn't used to having to answer questions she hadn't written herself. They pulled up the permit on the projector. Big, bold letters. Applicant. Lakeside Preserve. HOA. Utility provider, Lakeside Utility Management. Property access, parcel 41. A HOA managed shoreline. Then they pulled up my deed, my survey, my notarized 1981 water rights agreement. The crowd behind me, maybe 30 neighbors, most of whom I hadn't spoken to in years, murmured like they were watching a courtroom drama play out in real time. One woman gasped at the phrase civil fraud. Someone else whispered, "That's Calvin's land," like I was a ghost. Harold looked at me. "Mr. Reyes, would you care to explain what you discovered on your property?" I stood up. No notes, no theatrics, just truth. I found a private utility line tapped into my water system, a system I inherited, which is protected under a legal agreement signed in 1981. I also found that this HOA, which I have never joined or agreed to join, submitted a permit listing my property as community land. They did so without my knowledge or consent. I turned slightly, letting my voice carry to the back. I tried to handle it quietly. I filed objections. I submitted paperwork. I asked for explanations. I got fake violation notices ignored by city offices and a PR campaign pretending I was on board with a dock I never approved. I held up the pipe fitting the inspectors had photographed. This was buried 5 feet under my shoreline. No one put it there accidentally. Pamela's face was frozen. Not red, not flustered, just blank, like someone had yanked the plug out of her software. Someone in the back clapped. Not loud. Just one slow clap, then another, then a few more. The sound of polite, petty justice. Harold cleared his throat again. "The board will be voting to revoke permit 241B immediately, pending formal investigation." We'll also be referring this to the city attorney's office. There appear to be multiple discrepancies requiring further review." Pamela tried to speak, opened her mouth. Nothing came out. A guy from the HOA board, I think his name was Todd, scooted his chair away from her like she'd developed a contagious rash. Then the best part? A city staffer, clipboard in hand, walked right up to her and said, "Mrs. Stokes, could you confirm the point of contact for Lakeside Utility Management? We'll need to subpoena their installation records." She said nothing, just blinked. That night, Jackson uploaded the full zoning meeting to YouTube, titled it, "How One Man Beat His HOA with a Water Pipe and a 40-Year-Old Document." It hit 100,000 views in 2 days. Local news ran a follow-up. By the end of the week, Pamela was removed as HOA president by an emergency vote. 3 board members resigned. The city froze all lakeside development projects pending compliance review. The mayor's office issued a statement clarifying that no HOA has jurisdiction over Parcel 41A, nor any right to pursue development through it. And the cherry on top? I got a certified letter from the city attorney's office. "We appreciate your diligence in bringing this matter to light. Please consider this official confirmation that Parcel 41A remains under sole private ownership and is not, nor has it ever been, subject to Lakeside Preserve HOA authority." I framed it, hung it right above the door to the back porch, the same one that opens to the dock, where my dad's old fishing chair still sits, and every time I walk past it, I smile. Not because I won, but because they finally had to say it out loud. It's been about 3 months now. The pink flags are gone, the fake permit's dead. Pamela? Last I heard, she and her husband put their house on the market and moved 2 towns over, something about a fresh start. They left behind a power-washed legacy of brittle smiles and broken trust. Nobody waves when her name comes up. Some of the HOA folks still pretend they were concerned about her behavior all along, like they weren't clapping during the ribbon-cutting announcement for that dock that never got built. Fine by me. I didn't stick around to gloat. Didn't need to. Once you see someone fall off their high horse in real time, the replay's just noise. Instead, I went back to what I actually care about. The lilacs bloomed early this year. I replanted them with cuttings from Walter's garden. Turns out his wife had taken a few clippings from my mom's bushes years ago, just in case. Sometimes people surprise you in good ways, too. The air's thick with that smell now, sharp, sweet, with something old in it. Feels like my mom's still here, checking the soil, calling me out for planting things too shallow. The dock's still there, untouched except for the new paint I put on myself last week, barn red, just like my dad used to slap on everything he built. The deck boards creak the same way they always did. I leave the chair out there now, not for me, just because it belongs. Walter drops by sometimes, sits with me in the evenings, beer in hand, baseball on the radio, just like we used to with my folks. We don't talk about Pamela. We don't have to. She's a footnote now. Once or twice, someone's asked if I'll finally join the HOA now that the bad apple's gone. I just laugh, politely, then change the subject. Some places aren't meant to be managed. They're meant to be left alone. One Saturday, Dana from 3 doors down brought her kid over to see the garden. He's maybe 7, real curious, real loud, asked me why the flowers smell like jelly beans and soap. I told him it was just how lilacs are, told him they were planted before he was born, told him how some things are worth fighting for, even if it's just a patch of ground and a memory. He nodded like he got it. Might have just wanted a snack, but still, it was a moment. Before they left, Dana turned and said, "You know, I used to think this was just the weird house by the water. Now it feels like part of the neighborhood." I smiled. It always was. The neighborhood just forgot. Now and then, someone will ask if I'll ever host a barbecue or maybe a wedding, since the setting is so lovely. I tell them sure, maybe someday if they ask nicely and bring good ribs. And they laugh, because now they know. You don't touch this land unless you're invited. You don't plant a dock over someone's roots. And you definitely don't try to steal a man's lilacs.